From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. And yes, Brandon, this music's been around for about a year and a half or so. The intro, beginning of the year. We're also rebranding. The podcast is going through a significant rebrand for 2025. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for tuning in. And good eye there and good ear, Brandon. So no election news today. Fair. I think we're all inundated with it. So we're going to focus on cyber, focus strictly on cyber this morning. And, you know, today the American people choose. Hopefully they choose wisely. And that's that. All right. So without further ado, join me for my double espresso. Coffee cup. Cheers, y'all. All right, here we go. We'll kick off with Nokia investigating whether the third-party vendor was breached after a threat actor claimed to be selling the company's stolen source code. That threat actor is obviously world-renowned intel broker. He's claiming to be selling Nokia source code that was stolen after they breached a third-party vendor server. So on the dark web, he's posted today, I am selling a large collection of Nokia source code, which we got from a third-party contractor that directly worked with Nokia to help aid their development of some internal tools. They claim to have stolen SSH keys, source code, RSA keys, Bitbucket logins, SMTP accounts, webhooks, and hard-coded credentials. The threat actor said they gained access to a third-party vendor SonarQube server using default credentials, allowing them to download the customer's Python projects, including those belonging to Nokia. Bleeping Computer shared a file tree that allegedly stolen data with Nokia, asking if the data belonged to them. There's been no response as of yet. Intel broker, obviously world famous for multiple different data leaks of these sorts. So someone shouldn't discount what he's talking about here. But again, third-party risk continues to evolve. And in development, this third-party risk is significant. Now, I think this is a third-party development house, right? This is some third-party company that is probably outsourced that may not be taking security at the same level of seriousness that Nokia itself does. And so now this obviously reaches to that. And again, this goes to the idea of managing third-party risk and managing it effectively. And unfortunately for security practitioners, this is a very difficult challenge because simply you've got to keep up with the pace of business. And a lot of times there's the cost factor. And while sometimes you can argue against going with someone who may introduce a risk versus cost, a lot of times that's a lost cause for so many organizations. So any tips any of you have that are listening or watching, please put them in the comments. Let us know. I'd love to be able to put something together here, obviously crediting everyone who contributes to it as well. Schneider Electric have also launched an investigation after attackers claim to have stolen sensitive data from one of the company's systems. Those attackers, not Intel broker, but known as Hellcat, claim to have breached Schneider's Jira issue tracking system. They say they've compromised critical data, including project issues and plugins, along with 400,000 rows of user data, totaling more than 40 gigabytes of compressed data. They're demanding $125,000 ransom. Noted the ransom amount will drop by 50% if the vendor does confirm that the breach did take place. Here's news for you, Mr. Criminal Hellcat. They have to if they're publicly traded. The SEC requires them to report a material breach. So save the 50% discount. Unless you're trying to get some notoriety out of it, then by all means, boo-boo, do your thing. One of the hackers has published a couple of screenshots on X to demonstrate how they got access to the Jira system and the theft of data. Schneider said they're investigating the incident involving access to one of their internal project execution tracking platform, which is hosted in an isolated environment. All kind of true. In a way where Jira's kind of isolated, but Jira has a lot of data, a ton of data, from vulnerabilities to managing bugs to tickets to customer issues, like everything. So attackers getting that's a bunch of OSINT. Like that's a lot of OSINT, even if there's nothing really in there of significance, right? Let's say they don't put source code in Jira, right? Let's say none of that exists, but just all of that OSINT is insane. It's crazy and it's scary. There's that. Cisco, for their end, are notifying a limited set of their customers that attackers accessed non-public files back in October. So the tech giant denied that it suffered a breach, but said on October 18th it's an investigation into an incident. Again, similar to what we just saw with Schneider and Nokia, where someone kind of came out and said we compromised some Cisco files. Well, the actor did download data on a public-facing DevHub environment, a platform the company uses to make software code, scripts, and more available for customers. Cisco admitted a small number of files that were not authorized for public download may have been published. Cisco updated its statement and said a limited set of CX professional services customers had files included, and we notified them directly. In the event that we identify further customer files, they'll notify those customers directly. Customers with outstanding questions can follow up with their accounts team. The statement follows claims made by on Cybercrime Forum by one prominent criminal who said that they stole troves of stolen technical documents as well as production source code in a broad range from a broad range of Fortune 500 companies. They've asked for $200,000. Cisco offered $200,000 to get the person to take the post down on X. They declined. After the dark web post was revealed, Cisco says they're working with law enforcement to investigate the claims. As of yet, we don't know how they got in or where that data came from altogether. Earlier this month, we reported that MoneyGram suffered a data breach, and a significant one with that. We have people internal to the company saying that this breach was significant to the company, and today the CEO was replaced. Now, they're saying that this wasn't a result of the data breach, but rather something they had planned for months, but it's abrupt. It's just, hello, Mr. Alex Holmes is being replaced by Anthony Sohu. That's it. That's the press release. They say it's not related to the recent cyber issue. However, internal people leaked to me specifically that it's directly attributed to the fact that MoneyGram never picked up their technical debt, never addressed their technical debt. And when the breach happened, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. The board was already flirting with several candidates for the CEO position, and that's exactly what happened there. But good news, their CISO wasn't fired. The CEO did. Hey, could this be a trend? Could this be a trend of understanding that digital debt starts at the very top and not at the CISO? And so when a cyber event happens due to technical debt, due to the fact that you're not really picking up on the fact that you need to have resiliency, that really falls on the leadership. Interesting. I'm sure there's more to this story. I'll continue to find out, and as it becomes available, let you know. But I thought this was very, very interesting. We'll move on to the SEC, trying to get an oral testimony from a former SolarWinds engineers who resides in the Czech Republic. The solar engineers who documented concerns over network vulnerability tied to VPN access and unmanaged devices. According to the SEC, they wanted to get assistance from the Czech Republic's Ministry of Justice in securing testimony from network engineer Robert Krajier, who used to work at SolarWinds and does reside in the Czech Republic. The SEC offered to depose him voluntarily in Germany or at the U.S. Embassy in Prague, but Krajier, who's represented by the SolarWinds legal counsel, has declined those options. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer has ordered SolarWinds and CISO Tim Brown to respond to the SEC's request for foreign judicial assistance by Friday, with any reply from the SEC due by November 15th. If Judge Engelmeyer allows the SEC to proceed with this request, the agency will ask the Czech Ministry of Justice to respond within 60 days so the SEC can gather testimony ahead of the expected 2025 trial date. The SEC says that SolarWinds and Tim Brown specifically committed securities fraud by publicly misrepresenting the company's cybersecurity practices between October of 2018 and December of 2020. They claim the testimony offers insights into network access control and VPN vulnerabilities that undermine SolarWinds security claims. I'm interested to see how this plays out, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't think they're going to have a case here, right? I think systematically this is going to prove that there are a lot of network engineers and a lot of people who want to put additional controls on, but those additional controls don't support the business in some cases, or in other cases, they're not, they're just really, really difficult to implement. So, you know, and vulnerabilities aren't typically patched by the network team, but the IT team. So, was the security team responsible? Was the IT team responsible? There's a lot to break here. And Tim Brown's been actively speaking about this. He's given a whole bunch of talks. So, there's a lot of data out there. If you haven't subscribed to our Substack, jamesazar.substack.com, please make sure to do so now. This podcast is available in written format with actual clear action plan after the fact, all there summarized for you. Copy paste it, you can take it out, you can share the Substack, it's absolutely free, and it kind of helps keep people updated. So please make sure to go subscribe now to the Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. I'd really appreciate it, and make sure to subscribe and follow this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform, and hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and follow on X. All right, Google on Monday announced patches for more than 40 vulnerabilities as part of their Android November 2024 set of security updates. 2 flaws have been exploited in attacks. Those are CVE 2024-43047. It's an exploited security defect disclosed last month after Amnesty International and then Google's tag team found evidence of in the wild exploitation. Qualcomm released patches for the issue last month, warning it affects dozens of chipsets and describing it as a high severity use after free bug in the digital signal process services. So it's likely being exploited by a commercial spyware vendor when it's coming from both of those. The second exploited vulnerability is CVE 2024-43093. It's a high severity elevation of privilege bug in Android's framework component. It also impacts Documents UI component of Project Mainline, which was updated through Google Play. So you want to make sure you get those updated. Okta, for their end, addressed an authentication bypass bug that affected those with long usernames or employees with wordy domain names. The security hole could have allowed criminals to pass Okta's AD-LDAP delegated authentication using just a username. However, it could only be exploited if a series of conditions were met, and one of those being the username that had 52 characters or more. Though it was unusual, some people had a 52-character username. And that's not entirely out of the question when you think of people who may have 4 or 5 names. And if you use all 4 or 5 names in the username of someone, that by all means, it's there. Other conditions that needed to be met were previous user authentication created a cache of the authentication. And if the cache was used first, which could occur if the AD-LDAP agent was down or cannot be reached, for example, due to high network traffic. So all in all, that's now fixed. OWASP is warning and beefing up its defenses ahead of deepfakes, saying the signs are pointing to a coming onslaught of such attacks. Already, AI-generated text is becoming more common in emails, and security firms are trying to find ways to detect emails likely not created by human. Human emails written have declined to about 88% of all emails, while text attributed to LLMs now account for about 12% of all emails. That's up from 7% in 2022. To help organizations develop stronger defenses against AI-based attacks, the top 10 for LLM applications and generative AI groups within the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, also known as OWASP, released a trio of guidance documents for security organizations on Halloween. To its previously released AI cybersecurity and governance checklist, the group added a guide for preparing for deepfake events, a framework to create AI security centers of excellence, and a curated database on AI security solution. While the previous top 10 guide is useful for companies building models and creating their own AI services and products, the new guidance is aimed at users of AI technology. So, one security vendor's job candidate is a deep fake attack that's coming from Exabeam there as well. So you can obviously see kind of the advancement here of these technical anti-deepfake solutions are needed. Deepfake incidents are capturing the imagination and fear of IT professionals, with about 48% very concerned over deepfakes. At present, 74% believing deepfakes will pose a significant future threat. You know, I have a gut feeling about deepfakes in job interviews. They're going to go back to being in person. You're going to put a candidate on a plane and you're going to fly him in and meet him. That's just going to be the way it works. Human interaction. Number one thing to solve deepfake. Human interaction. There's that. And our final story of this morning. Last month, obviously, we reported here that Apple dropped its lawsuit against NSO, citing difficulties with advancing the case due to the discovery phase. This month, WhatsApp's parent company, Meta, asked a judge to punish the same company for not complying with orders to hand over its source code. And for years, many victims have failed to get courts to take action against spyware manufacturers or countries that have deployed the invasive technology against them. For litigants who seek remedies against spyware makers and users in court, it all points to one conclusion. Taking legal action against spyware is very hard, beset, and it is. It's taking action against spyware vendors is suing the gun manufacturer for creating the gun. Doesn't work the same way, right? That it's the same exact case. It's the user of the gun who should be punished, not the person who created it. So spyware vendors do a lot of positive work in terms of saving lives. Now, there are governments who've abused it, and those governments, that's a whole different story. Now, the companies here, and this is the hurdle, this is the difference between the gun debate to the spyware debate, right? The difference is, in the gun debate, it's A and B. It's the person who used the gun and the victim. Here, there's a third person. That third person is the tech company whose product is abused by the spyware vendor in order to create the opportunity for the customer, the nation state, to get access to that device. And I think those are going to be, this is going to be a long withstanding debate that will haunt our industry for the next decade. Because I don't think any court can outright rule this, because I think the national security concerns will always override this. And since 9/11 and the subsequent terror attacks in London and in Spain and France and other places, civil liberties have severely decreased for the sake of national security. And so this debate has a lot of merit from the victim perspective, but the person responsible is really the government using it, not the spyware vendor creating it, and the technology companies that are being taken advantage of by the spyware vendors due to specific vulnerabilities they find within the company or whatnot within their software. That's a whole different issue. And I think that issue, all of within itself, is a complex one that I don't know that I can form an opinion one way or the other, because I see both sides of the coin. And I see the side of the victim, and I see the side of government abusing it. But I also see the point of having spyware vendors available to nation states in order to be able to save lives when the time comes, and they need to be able to get data that's critical to prevent a terror attack, a potential assassination, or a national security matter. So again, complex issues that we deal with in cyber. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Go out and exercise your right to vote today. Ignore the news is what I would tell you for your mental health sake. Today, you're going to see a lot of ups and downs. And hopefully tonight, this country and the world will know who will be the 47th president of these United States. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.